Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which these are called FRCR Achievers Web Meets or Achievers Web Meets. These webinars are of immense value to your development, not just as a radiologist, but also as a person. And just to give you a little bit of a background, so my name is Koshi Jacob. I'm a consultant radiologist who's been working in the UK for now 23 years now. And I started my journey in India and came to the UK to do to do my residency in medicine. But I had decided beforehand that I was going to do radiology. So I finished MRCP and then I got into radiology. And then I worked after finishing my 5 years of training. I spent many years in the NHS, and after I think something like 6 years in the NHS, I decided to leave and work as a teleradiologist because I could, and I had by then I had created a passive source of income through property and other things, so I didn't need to be fixed to a job as such. And while I was during that transition, I contacted a coach to say, I'm making this transition. I don't quite know how it's going to go. And he coached me, gave me two sessions of coaching. And I decided that this is such incredible stuff. It transformed the way I looked at things. And what it did to me is made me want to become a coach myself. So I spent another 2 years while doing my teleradiology and the courses and all that. I trained to be a coach, and I ended up becoming qualified as a coach with the International Coach Federation. Took about 2 years, but I got my certifications. And ever since then, I've been passionate about giving my knowledge and experience to help radiologists, not just to pass exams and be radiologists and do all that, but also to find some good work-life balance and get fulfillment in life. At the end of the day, it's all about, why do we work? It should be more than just making money or doing that. It has to be something that you do because you enjoy it. So the reason I've used this topic as a beginning topic is because I know that one of my challenges is to identify and manage my priorities. And that is really one of the things that I struggle with a lot. So let's move on. Now, Peter Turler, he said, managing your time without setting priorities is like shooting randomly and calling whatever you hit the target. You've got to be fair. You've got to set priorities because there are so many demands on our time, so many demands on our time, not just as a radiologist. Radiology is part of what we do, or our work. If you're not a radiologist and you're here, our work is only part of what we do. A lot of it has to do with life itself, family, recreation, pleasure, going on holidays, maybe being involved in your, maybe if you're spiritual, being involved in something spiritual, and your relationship with your friends and with your family and with your spouse, if you have one. These are incredibly important things, even perhaps more important than what we call work. And if we don't recognize that, then we quickly end up, like I have often, prioritizing work with effects on the family. Now, thankfully, I've been fortunate that my family hasn't suffered as so much that, I haven't got good relationships or anything. I've got good relationships, but it could have been better if I knew what to do when I was a resident. So my questions really, and I'm going to ask you a few questions here, which would be lovely for you to put in the chat. Do you have a to-do list for use in your day-to-day activities? Do you have a to-do list? Just say yes or no, or write something in the chat box so that I know that, yeah, so yeah, no, no, yeah. Is there anyone who has? Yes, Akansha has one. Anyone else? Some have, sometimes don't follow it very religiously. No. It sounds like there are more no's than yes, and that is exactly how it was for me. Um, and I'll tell you what, when you have all these things swirling around in your brain, it makes you quite anxious. You remember something in the middle of the day and you get concerned because will I remember it in half an hour when I actually get time? And you've got all these things in your head, and it's so incredibly overwhelming that it makes you feel stressed all the time. And one of the biggest sort of things for me, or revelations, if you like, was the to-do list. The fact that if I could move it from my head to paper, at that time it was paper, but now it's electronic. It could be electronic or it could be paper. You take away some of the stress and put it onto a different box, into a different place. So I just want to emphasize here, uh, absolutely, as Kansha says, that not able to get it done gives anxiety. But even worse is the anxiety of not knowing if you'll remember what all the things you need to do. So that is quite stressful. And I want to know, is that correct? Do people feel that? And there are some members of my team as well, and you can also say that. Um, do you find it a little bit anxious, anxiety creating to have all these things that you want to do, but you haven't recorded it? Is that something that you find difficult? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yep, yeah. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. So and then the question really is: are you someone? I think this is probably a question for later, but are you someone who's reactive, or um, to whatever comes up in front of you then, rather than, so as soon as something comes into your mind, you want to act on it because you're afraid that you'll forget it or not do it, so you act on it, but then you realize that you've missed something else that should be done. Does that sound familiar at all or not? um Anyone? Yeah, it does, it does. Yeah, some people know. Good. So you don't react straight away. So I presume you're the kind of people then that you have a new thought, you don't write it down, and you don't act on it, and it doesn't get done. That sounds to be like I was. So are there any prioritization tools that that could help you? Do you have any tools that you use to help you with prioritization? So I'm going to put a form here that you can fill. If you know any of these, let me see if it works first of all. I think it works. Yeah. So just fill this in while we're talking. Don't take your time. I'll keep talking, but just fill it up because it's quite useful to for me to understand, and also for you to understand when you write it down, what those prioritization sort of tools you have, if you know of any. Okay. So let's move on. So Jim Rohn, who is very, very famous as a motivational speaker and coach, he died recently, I think 1 or 2 years ago. He said either you run the day or the day runs you. And I have to say that is absolutely right. Now, time stressors are some of the most pervasive sources of pressure in the workplace, and they really happen because you have too much to do in too little time. Okay, so knowing how to beat the stress and deliver the things that are essential to doing a good job is essential. Okay. And I would say that managing priorities, it's an essential aspect of time management. So rather than getting more things done in less time, you learn how to get the right things done in less time. Okay. It also has other advantages. Could some of you write some of the advantages of getting your priorities right? I'm going to start with one, and then you just add on some more. Calmness, calmness. Okay, I'll write down. Calmness is one. It makes you calm to manage your priorities. Is there anything else that you can think of that you can use to reduce the sort of chaos? It helps to meet deadlines. Absolutely. That's right, Asha. Um, and I just want to acknowledge Asha here. She has helped me with this presentation, both in terms of helping me with the content, but also in presenting it or getting the presentation together with me. So thank you, Asha, for that. Keeping my cool. Yeah, panicking makes things worse. Absolutely. So you can massively reduce stress, okay, by by um, by prioritizing, and you and that also helps. The other thing is it helps you to allocate your time where it's most wisely spent. We've got here plan and organize each day exactly, so that you free yourself in your team, because most of you will be working in a team of some sort. It frees you and your team time to attend to less important tasks later. And it also prioritizing things helps you deal with conflicting priorities. So when you put your tasks and projects on a to-do list or a sort of action program and add them to your schedule, you'll know which tasks clash with other tasks. And you can then work with yourself deadlines. So there are software out there where you can, put your task in, and then you can order it. And we're going to go through some of that. But being in control of your time directly correlates with being in control of your goals. So if you're one who sets goals, which I strongly recommend that all of you do, then it's essential that you do that. Now, as a radiologist, I'd say, especially if you're sitting an exam like the FRCR or Franska, then a good process will help you prioritize your exam into your daily routine. Okay, so let's move on then. So here are some of the prioritizing tools. Okay, now there are lots of tools out there, and I'm not going to discuss all these. You'll be pleased to know. What I am going to, and I'd say just take a screenshot of this or watch it later on the website. But there are lots of different types of prioritization, tools that help you with prioritization. The Eisenhower is one of the most popular ones. It's the urgent, important principle. It helps you divide tasks into whether they're urgent or important. And then there's another one called the paired comparison analysis. That's when decisions where the criteria itself are vague, subjective, or inconsistent. And what you do here is you individually compare each item with all the items on the list. So let's say you have sit a packet for the rapid reporting, and then you've got on the list, do your groceries, do your post, go to the post office, or go out for a meal, or do something else. You basically look at the list and compare each one, take each one with the rest of the list, and then decide which one you're going to do. So individually pairing and comparison, that's what that paired comparison analysis is. The decision matrix analysis is where you prioritize tasks while taking many other factors into consideration. And I'm not going to explain all these because there's just there isn't enough time for that. But then there's the action priority matrix, which we are going to discuss in a future webinar. I think it's next week. And this is a quick and simple diagramming technique, which basically asks you to plot the value of the task, okay, against the effort it will consume. And by doing this, you will spot the quick wins, the ones that you can quickly finish. There's a book called Getting Things Done, which actually transformed the way I acted with this whole process. It's by someone called David Allen, I think, and he talked about moving things from your brain into the to-do list, and then he said that if something can be done in under 2 minutes, do it straight away. And then you basically you start reducing your to-do list so it doesn't look overwhelming and pages long. You do all the 2-minute things first, and then, so that's where the action priority matrix come in. So you can also use something called GTD, which is getting things done. If you do a search on Google for getting things done, then you will find David Allen's book and website. Very useful. The Eisenhower, we're going to go into a little bit. And then there's the Ansoff Matrix. These are pretty, I didn't think that this one and the modified border was going to be very useful for radiologists. It's more for business. But the 80-20 rule can be quite useful. And basically, this rule is where, 80%, it's the rule where you say like 80% of your results come from 20% of your your effort and things like that. So that can be a very useful thing to find out which are the things that really work. But what we're going to discuss now is really the Eisenhower matrix, okay? And this, obviously, most of you probably know that he was a famous general in the U.S. Army during the World War II. And in 1954, he gave a speech to the Second Assembly of the World Council of Churches, and he said, "I have two kinds of problems: the urgent and the important. The urgent are not important, and the important are never urgent." And the Eisenhower principle is said to be how he organized his workload and priorities. Now, to use this principle, what you would do is list all the activities and projects that you feel you have to do. Write that down. List all the activities and projects that you feel you have to do. So what I'd like you to do now is write that sentence down. You can do it later because it's going to take maybe hours to do, but basically write it all down or put it into a to-do list. One good to-do program I recommend is To Do by Microsoft. It's free usually if you have Microsoft and a Microsoft account, but there are lots of apps out there that have to-do lists. There's one called Todoist. That's a really good website. I think I'll just say Todoist. That's a good app that you can use. But basically what he did was he looked at something, let's say, that's important and urgent, then you had to do them, okay? So if they were important and urgent, you do them. If they're important but not urgent, schedule them. Put a date on them, put a time on them. They're important but not urgent. If they're not important but they're urgent, the concept is to delegate them. Find someone else who can do that, okay? And we'll give you some examples of these things. And then the fourth one is not important, not urgent, and you've got to find a way to eliminate them, okay? And what I'd like you to all do now, therefore, is to get a little sheet of paper, make 4 boxes like this, and write important, and then not important at the second row in here, and then write urgent and not urgent, and fill up a few things there based on the inspiration that I give you now of what you think are important and urgent tasks. Okay, so here goes.